Hello my friend, in this video I'm going to break down my single release strategy and the music release strategy that I personally use and that I've actually used to get about 3.5 million streams on Spotify so far, and that's got my songs on about 13 or 14 Spotify editorial playlists. Before I continue, that's kind of a huge statement, so if you haven't been following me and you haven't seen that yet, there's a video that I've done on how I got on those editorial placements, a little bit more in depth, so there'll be a link above if you want to check that out. But for this video I want to go into the single release strategy, kind of the how I'm releasing music over time and how I think you should do it as well. So jumping right into it, the main thing is that I do believe that you should be releasing new music every 4 to 5 weeks. It doesn't really matter which day you do it on, at the beginning of the month, the end of the month, which day in particular. I know a lot of people like releasing music on Fridays. I personally actually like releasing music on Mondays because I usually run ads for my singles. So the idea is that I can build up a bit of data on that song and send it over to the algorithm, so that way on Friday there's a bigger chance that it'll push things out to the release radar algorithm and all that kind of stuff. And I'll dive a little bit more into this, but I think I'm really happy that I personally found this release kind of strategy and this kind of schedule before about a year or so ago. Every time that I was releasing new music, it always felt like I was missing something or that I wasn't doing quite enough. And then always on release day, it was less of a celebration and it was more of like a stressful, like wondering if I should be reaching out or posting things and this and that. And now everything's a lot more streamlined now that I've kind of landed on this strategy. And so the main thing is every 4 to 5 weeks release a single. And the idea is to do everything before the actual release day. So create all the assets that you need for ads and any website pages that you might need, and then schedule ads to start running on the day of release, as well as scheduling all the social posts as well. So this way, on release day, everything's just scheduled out, ready to go. It's all been done. And you can kind of sit back and do more of like the day-to-day stuff. So like responding to comments and maybe making new posts if there's any kind of cool playlist ad or anything that happens along the way, but generally it's nice knowing that your bases are covered. And in particular, the reason I would say 4 to 5 weeks, there's two main reasons. And the first reason comes all down to the Spotify algorithm. So you may or may not know that when you have access to the Spotify for Artists dashboard, you can do Spotify playlist submissions to send them off to the Spotify editor. And if you want a little bit of help on that, I've done a video where I actually filmed myself doing the playlist pitch beforehand, and that song actually ended up on an editorial playlist as well. So if you need any help with playlist pitching, I'll link that video up above here. But the idea is, with the Spotify for Artists backend, you're able to pitch one song at a time to the editors. So the idea is, if you were to release, say, a 5-song EP, you would only be able to pitch one of the songs out of that 5 songs, effectively making the rest of the EP kind of useless. That's why I think it'd be more important to spread that out over time. This way you could be pitching each and every single one of those songs and each give them their own chance in the sun to kind of shine and do well, kind of thing. So that's one main reason I would do a single every 4 to 5 weeks. And the other is that when you do pitch, you can automatically get your song in the release radar playlist of everybody that follows you on Spotify. And the thing is that when you pitch a new song and it gets in the release radar playlist, it can stay in that playlist for 28 days, basically the first 4 to 5 weeks or so. I think it's 4 weeks that they say of that song's release. It'll be in the release radar playlist. On top of that, if your song does do good, say the data is looking good into the Spotify algorithm's eyes, it'll then start pushing that song out to release radar playlists of people that don't follow you. So maybe people that are similar in listening habits and like similar stuff to the people that do follow you, and kind of based on the data of the input that you sent in for the playlist pitch, it'll actually start pushing it out further. And the idea is, if you did one pitch, say on day 1, and then 2 weeks later you put another song in and pitch that one and release that, it would then push the first song out of the release radar. So you'd effectively kind of be cutting off the potential reach for the first single because you got a little bit too anxious or whatever, you thought it would be a better idea to release more. you're actually kind of having your own releases fight against each other. So that's one big reason that I would say one single every 4 to 5 weeks. That way you can maximize the amount of pitches that you can do, and you can maximize the amount of time that that single stays in the release radar playlist and has that extended reach. The second reason is a lot more about the actual like listener and fan engagement. So you do, like, obviously you want to try to please the mighty algorithm and do things for the algorithm, but at the same time, you got to think of your actual listener as well. And I've been finding that about 4 to 5 weeks ends up being basically about a monthly release. And I find this is a pretty good kind of way to keep people engaged so that there's something new and you're staying top of mind and you're on their mind every single month because you're releasing something new, and you don't just kind of fade away like the classic release. Takes so long to release a 5-song EP and then disappear for a year because you need to start working on the new music. That's why you're constantly kind of building momentum and staying in front of people's eyes. If you do it a little bit too frequently, say example, if you did like once per week, let's say, kind of the other extreme, even if you'd imagine if you did one per day, the more closer together your releases are, the less special that release is. Because then it's like, oh, they just released another song this week. I know they'll be releasing another one, so like I'm not too interested in checking it out because I know this is just one of many. It just seems less special. So I think it's about finding that balance between being frequent and staying in like top of mind, but also not being so frequent that it's kind of annoying and people kind of take it for granted and it's less of a special event. And I find that 4 to 5 weeks is a pretty good way to kind of balance that out. So those are really the two main reasons that I'm finding it super effective. It's a good way to balance the algorithm as well as stay top of mind with actual fans and kind of considering that. So moving beyond that point of like why I think it's an effective strategy, how about how you could actually do it? So throughout this, you might be kind of thinking, oh crap, like I don't think I could release a new song every single month. Or maybe you can and you can just go ahead and run with it. But if you think that you can't, there's a couple of suggestions that I'd have. One is, I mentioned at the top of the video or a couple times throughout it, that if you have say a 5-song EP and releasing that whole 5-song EP would kind of mess up the algorithm and be a bit too much. And it's even on a fan engagement thing. It's a kind of a big thing to say, hey, let's stop and listen to 30 minutes of music. But if you have, say, a 5-song EP, so simple, stretch that bad boy out. Then now you have 5 releases, okay? Perfect. So if you're sitting on like a record or something like that, you kind of have the content, you're all ready to go. And you can always do the thing where at the end of the 5 months, you can put them all together into an album format, but at least this way you get the benefit of also releasing singles along the way. The other thing is if you don't have the music yet, this one's gonna probably be sounding a little intense, but I would challenge you to do some, I guess we could call it the 52-week challenge. Release a new song every single week for a whole year. And the idea would be start something brand new at the beginning of the week and get all the way to a polished, finished, mixed and mastered song. Particularly, even if you can't mix and master yourself, challenge yourself to do it and release it at the end of each week. And also put it out there in the world in some way. Let's say you put a clip of it on Instagram, you put the full thing on YouTube. Maybe don't go all the way on Spotify because the quality might be a little bit lower when you're focusing on quantity like this. But the idea is, if you could actually commit yourself to doing this, at the end of the year, you'll be so much better at making music, for one, and you'll know your own sound and you'll know your processes and your techniques, but you'll also have 52 songs to choose from. You could take the best ones and then apply that to a monthly release in year 2, let's say. And on top of that, if you're actually releasing them on Instagram and whatever, YouTube, you'll actually be getting feedback from actual fans and they can kind of raise their hand and say, this song's really great, this song wasn't so good, and then you'll have a better idea of which songs to actually release. So I think that's pretty cool, and that's actually something that I did about a year or 2 ago. I did weekly releases, mostly putting them on Facebook and YouTube. And from that process, like basically what I said is true. Like by the end of the year, it was so easy to have finished songs that I could just easily release on Spotify after that. It took a lot of the guesswork out and a lot of the hard work. And then also by the end of the year, I was way better at making music, way more efficient. And like now personally, also from that experience, I don't really experience writer's block anymore. I think by pushing yourself through that to create over and over and over again, suddenly you become less critical of yourself and a little bit more confident in your own skills, and you're used to not just waiting around for inspiration to strike. You can make something out of nothing at any point when you've done that kind of long process. It really just sharpens your skills. I would highly recommend it in any case. It's just a really great way to grow. And then beyond that, if you are planning like a release schedule yourself, one thing that I would say, once you have the music ready to go, I would say like 5 to 6 songs is pretty good. So that way you could plan out about 6 months of releases. And the way that I would personally approach this, and this is what I do with my own music, is I would kind of like envision the actual fans that you have and imagine them experiencing those new songs every month. Like say the first song's upbeat, so then you want the second song to be a bit more chilled out because you want to show a different side, and then because that one was chill, you might want to do something a little bit more upbeat after, and kind of like imagine what the experience would be from a fan perspective of you dropping these songs in that particular sequence. So that way you have kind of a plan of when you're going to be dropping these songs, and you kind of know what you're doing for the next 6 months. It's super relaxing knowing that you have everything ready for 6 months, trust me. But also at the same time, I would leave some flexibility so that you could be a little bit more adaptive along the way. So I think a good example would be, let's say your first song was a upbeat song, let's say, and then the second song for month 2, you're planning something more chill. What if for month 1 that upbeat song does really, really well? So it's getting in some Spotify playlists and people are reacting it really well. You might want to be a little bit flexible and maybe switch your second song, which was supposed to be chill, to another more upbeat song to kind of keep that flow going, right? And on the other hand, if you were going to do, say, let's say 2 really dark songs in a row, and the first song does awful, right? It didn't do that well. You might want to be like, okay, let me switch it up. The first song was dark. Let's switch it up so the second song, instead of being dark also, is a little bit more happy, for example. So you're going to want to have a plan, but be flexible in that plan and kind of adapt how things are going. I think one example might be like, say you're planning like a really happy song in month 3, but like something awful happens, like, I don't know, a world pandemic or something like that. You might want to be a little bit flexible. It might not be appropriate to drop a happy song, for example. So you just might want to switch it up to something a little bit more topical with the time, say something more dark or something. That's kind of the idea I'm trying to get across. Like, have a plan, but be flexible in that plan. It's going to be the way that you'll have the best results, or at least that's the way that I've had the best results. So hopefully this has been useful, getting some insight into how I kind of schedule out my own releases and how I do things. I'll leave also a link to a Spotify release checklist. So I also have a checklist of things that I'll try to accomplish before the release day of each song, from everything from distributing to actually scheduling out ads and social posts and all that stuff, so that I'm kind of just chilling and celebrating on release day. I'll leave a link to that in the description if you want to check out the checklist. It's free, of course, and hopefully it'll be useful. Other than that, if you found this video useful, make sure that you like and subscribe and all that good stuff. Other than that, I'll see you in the next video, and have a good one, my friend. See ya.